And Jesus made his way quietly to the water's edge near Tyre and Sidon. It was near the water's edge, a quiet and reflective place. Once again, he invites the disciples to give him a little space, an opportunity to pray and to reflect, to re-energize. Jesus again had been in conflict with those around him, and he needed a little time and a little prayer. You can guess that there are moments, despite his divine call to ministry, that he would say, I love this job. And other moments that he would say, why do I love this job? And so he went off to pray and reflect, because his time with God was the most precious time of all, and it's where he really got a chance to re-understand his call, to deepen his faith. You see, the world is not black and white. Many circumstances of life have profound complexities. Sometimes life is hard. Sometimes the answer is not obvious and does not come quickly. And when that happened to our Lord, he went away to pray. Those who think that they have all the answers and everyone else is wrong and they are right will eventually come to terms with the fact that it's God's call. God's call of who is right and what needs to happen in the end. I remember this kind of sermon when I was a teenager sitting in the pew, and I would always ask, what's he mad about now? This introduction to the gospel today is paramount because the commentaries suggest that there are two extinct ways we can look at this. Here's one. Jesus is encountered by a local woman who has a desperate need because her child is sick. And you know that women, in particular mothers, if their children are sick, they will do anything to get them help. And she goes to Jesus and she politely asks for help, and he ignores her. And then the disciples notice she's still bugging Jesus and say, send her away. Two interpretations of the Greek and Hebrew. One is, give her what she wants so she goes away. And the other one is, just let her go away. And then she appeals again with the passion that comes from a mom whose child is desperately ill. Please help me. And he rebukes her. And yet you see, according to one view of this, that he is rethinking it. Some commentaries say that Jesus was exclusive, that he was only caring for the Jewish community, and that he only had his eyes on the redemption of that community. And that this wonderful, extraordinary, passionate woman was able to change his mind, to open his thinking, and allow him to see that salvation was for all people everywhere. That's one version. Now the other version goes like this. Jesus was waiting for the woman. And when she got there and began to talk, what ran through his mind was, finally, everybody can hear. I'm going to take this to its fullest length. And he prodded her until she expressed the depth of her faith in the midst of her need. And he granted her what she asked for. But it was him in leadership of the conversation to get her to speak out loud that faith that was growing within her. Now, no matter which way you see this, whether you believe that Jesus was taught a lesson and grew in the midst of his vision for the world, or whether that he was in control of the conversation, the point is still the same. In our relationship with Jesus, we need to determined, deliberate, dedicated in our prayer life. For there are times where we appeal to Jesus and he says yes. There are other times he says wait. There are moments when he says in a different way. And there are times he says no. But for us, what it means is that we are determined, deliberate, and dedicated in our prayer life, knowing first and foremost that Christ has heard our plea and will respond in God's timing. This past Friday, I got to do one of the things I love in ministry the most, and that is to visit. I look forward to my time in the hospital with people, in nursing homes, in private residences. It's fair to say that the administration and organization of this place often gets me into complex difficulties. I would prefer to see the administration in black and white so that I could read it and not be confused. But when you send me to visit, when I get a chance to be with people, it is the highlight of my week. And on Friday, I saw two. And I understand under the Privacy Act, I can't tell you who they are, but if you guess, it's not my fault. The first in the hospital on Friday was a lifetime member of this congregation. He's been in the hospital quite a while, and he suffered a great deal, and yet his extraordinary faith, his determination, his dedication in prayer was so profoundly evident as I took his hand, anointed his forehead, and prayed for his healing. He believed that God would heal him. And he was willing to wait for it to happen in God's time. He wasn't happy about it. He was frustrated. But he was willing to wait for God's time because he spent a long time in his faith. And he understands that God's timing is not always our timing. I then made my way to Oxford Gardens to spend another short time with one of our lifetime members. I love spending the time with the senior women of this congregation. So many of them have reached that age and stage where they say whatever they want without any hesitation at all. And I walked up and I handed her the yellow rose. And she said, "Thank you," again. You see, she's received yellow roses before. I happen to privately think, God help me if I go without rose. She's so gracious. A lifetime of faith and commitment. And although she sits in a wheelchair, she believes with all her heart and soul that God still speaks into her life. Her faith in her prayer life, her determination, her dedication, her devotion of a lifetime of faith is what gives her strength in the most difficult moments of life. So whatever you believe about Jesus' encounter with the woman today, know that three things are true. When she walked away from Jesus, she believed that he was the Messiah of the world. She believed it before her own community believed it. She was ahead of her time in faith. And for that, she's been remembered for 2,000 years for her devotion to her child and her commitment to her faith. Number two, everyone around her had a new curiosity about how Jesus functioned when he was asked to grant a blessing. And it stirred up a conversation about how God functions for you and I when we appeal to the throne of grace for the things we need the most. And what's most important is, in the end, God does what's best for us. And last but not least, it proved the point, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that when we are devoted and determined and dedicated in prayer, amazing and extraordinary things happen every time.